Thank you, Dr. Nabanshu. Welcome to the all delegates from South Asian countries which are part of our SAPOM. In continuation of SAPOM's very rare and Hercules task undertaken by Dr. Nabanshu to make them aware, I am here to continue with another topic which is very relevant to agriculture and meteorology, that is weather and climate risk in agriculture. Next, sir. Under this topic, we have to understand agricultural risk concepts. We have to identify meteorological vulnerabilities. We have to use weather information for risk reduction, which is the ultimate aim of our advisory services, and to develop contingency planning strategy in case when you know the fear of any weather extremes, then what sort of strategy you have to adopt to save your farm produce or farm operation or agriculture. The concept of risk in agriculture, risk, you know, probability into consequences. When a certain type of amount of probability there and multiply by with the ultimate consequences, that is risk. Weather variability affects production stability because agriculture is being done in open, and man or the grower or a farmer have no control over these extremes or unusual weather. That's why it affects production in many ways, from sowing to the ultimate harvesting. Increasing climatic variability increase risk because when we grow a crop, we seem hope that everything will be normal and we will have a normal produce at least. But when climate is getting more and more variable, the initial variability or small variability, plants have inbuilt capacity to adjust itself. But when the extremes or frequent variability, then plant or the crop has to suffer. The risk identification in this, we will first have rainfall variability. As you might have heard a few days back about the IMD's monsoon outlook for 2026, likely to be below normal. But this variability is quite often nowadays. The temperature extremes in many places in South Asian countries, we have extremes away from their normal situations. Then we have soil moisture stress, which is very important for plant growth. Then pest and disease outbreak. These four are the major risk identification parameters in agriculture. Next, the source of weather and climate risk are droughts. When we have unusual scarcity of water for crops, that is drought, depending upon whether it is agriculture, meteorological, hydrological, or economical, socio-economical drought. But drought is always a very big risk in agriculture. Then flood, the heat and cold waves, then cyclones and storms, and then unseasonal rainfall. These 5-6 categories are the major risks who brings risk in agriculture or farming sector. Next, the impact pathway in agriculture. The crop growth and yield loss is the major due to these climatic or weather variability, then livestock heat stress. Yes, the biological entity like we, the animal or livestock also face the heat of this high temperature or the stress due to this variability. And fishery ecosystem impacts in sea also or in inland fishery, this ecosystem of the fish is also being impacted by this climatic variability. Next, the assessment framework of vulnerability in agriculture depends upon exposure. If these extremes or small variability are there, then plants is own mechanism to get it done. But if exposure is for a longer period, then it is have a big risk. Likewise, when a plant or a ecosystem is so sensitive, the risk will be more. And when adaptive capacity is more, then risk will be less. If this capacity is less, the risk will be more in agriculture. Next, the vulnerability and resilience, you might be coming across all this terminology nowadays, but your particular domain is vulnerable, but and how you will make it resilient against all these climatic scenarios or variability or changes, then vulnerability generally depends on exposure plus sensitivity minus adaptive capacity. If earlier two are more and last one less, then risk vulnerability will be more. In case of resilience, when a crop or a plant is able to recover after stress events, it's rare in few plants. Mostly plants are not so much resilient of this climatic variability, but whosoever is there in open or in stress condition, that will be more resilient. And we are to recognize or identify those resilient crops or the plants or genes to make the this farming system more resilient. Next. Then data analysis for vulnerability mapping. For this, we have to keep on doing this big data analysis to know whether what are the shift and how much the shift, whether it is within the norms or beyond norms or in extremes. In case of rainfall, temperature or frequency, these pictures depicts how rainfall or temperature or drought are being mapped in South Asian countries, and you can see the red one, the dark red has more April temperatures someday in 2024. So on the basis of these analysis, we can depict the vulnerability or the normality of these extreme or the existing weather parameters in your area. Next. Then example across agroecological regions. As you know, we have different agroecological regions. In arid regions where already we have limited resource of water availability, the drought risks are higher. In humid region, when the flood risks are more, in coastal regions the cyclone risks are more, because it depends in under which ecological region what are the major risks or major weather systems are prevalent, so likely the connected risk will be there. Next, principles of weather-based risk management. For this to manage all these risks, first foremost system is early warning system. It's one of the very important program of WMO to make early warning system for all, so that we can have something to manage ourselves or our domain or entities against these weather risks. Then second will be climate smart practice. What are the climate smart practice devised by different domain experts like agronomists, pathologists, or entomologists, soil scientists? Under what different weather conditions, how the technology or the operations, they are resilient to the extreme or changes. Then in case when we are unable to cope up with this, we have to have insurance and diversification. Through these we can compensate to certain extent, but to make them confident that you have to be in the profession to produce food for livelihood, then we have to provide insurance and we have to also uh, encourage diversification of agriculture so that at least we can get something from the fields. And then ultimately the weather advisory service, if you have accurate or acceptable weather forecast for your region or for your practical actionable advisory, then it will also help in risk management up to a certain extent. This will be dealt by Dr. after some time. Then weather information product. You might be knowing about type of forecast, the short and medium range, and then seasonal outlook, and then agromet advisories. Under seasonal outlook, you might have heard about the monsoon outlook in April, middle or so by India Meteorological Department, which is the sole custodian of meteorological needs of a country. And then we have short and medium range. But for agriculture, medium range is must because the farmer need at least some time to manage his or her resources to have your advisory actionable. And then ultimately, if you have these acceptable forecasts or with acceptable accuracy, you have agromet advisory where your team of expert advise the condition of the crop, the likelihood of any weather eventuality, and ultimately what you have to do under those circumstances. That is agromet advisory that will help farmer to save against the risk of weather extremes. Next. Then interpretation of forecast. When a forecast receive the forecast, then first will be how much probable it will be, whether we are likely to have rain next week, how much probability is 50%, 40 or above. Then forecast uncertainty, how much is uncertainty by the model, so that we may know the error of our forecast, and we may not be on panic button, but we may have level of confidence. Yes, this is the probability, this is the uncertainty, and on the basis of these two parameters, we have decision threshold. That it will be likelihood of the forecast, and on the basis of that forecast, you have to have advice through your actionable advisory to the farmer. Then next. Next, sir. Then integration with agromet services. Yes, you have well-established agromet services because the ultimate objective of any service in agriculture is agromet advisory. Whatever you have to pass on to your farmer, and for that you have to forecast crop stage. Then you have to have indices plus advisory. Then you have to have farmer decision support system. Yes, when you get when you got forecast, you at a particular crop stage, then what are the likelihood of any crop growth stage or insect pest infestation or disease development. Then on the basis of then you will provide advisory, prepare an advisory, and then you have to feed this system to the farmer decision support system various outreach module so that the farmer get the information well in right form and right time. Next, then contingency planning concept. Yes, you have to prepare for abnormal weather. In case monsoon is weak failure, a low start, a delayed onset, or break in between, or early withdrawal, then you have planning, contingency planning at for different crop diversification or some saving of your livestock or animals. Then you have to go for adaptive crop management. Yes, in those cases you have to have certain varieties, certain crops which have some adaptive capacity under these extreme, so that the farmer at least have some survival benefits from this contingency planning. In India, it is already a district level contingency planning uh, prepared by ICR, CRIDA, and IMD. It is taken since few years and is going to be updated at timely intervals so that we can have some planning under all type of abnormalities of weather. Next, yes, in continuation of this monsoon outlook, when monsoon is delayed, then we have to look for short duration variety. Is not so easy, but government functionaries or these KVKs and this universities or your agriculture department has to have some these backup program like short duration variety, alternate crops and staggered sowing so that you can get something from your farm. Next. Then, if you have mid-season dry spells, then you have different agronomical practices like mulching, life-saving irrigation, moisture conservation techniques, and these are to be ready and to be well in every farmer's field so that he may survive his crops accordingly. Next. Then, if we have excess rainfall management, we must have our drainage management system in place. We have raised bed in field. We have disease management because when we have high temperature, high humidity, or more rains, we are likely to have disease infestation or insect also. So we are to be prepared under in those circumstances of high rainfall. Next. Heat wave and frost management in summer season in northwest India and almost all of the region. We have protective irrigation to protect against the heat wave to save your plants from heat. Then mulches and shelters, then adjusted sowing dates also so that your final produce may be escaped from the terminal stress or some peculiar type of stress at the time of a very important growth stage of the crop. Next. Then in case when you have drought contingency planning, you must have already identified drought tolerant variety when you know that the droughts are likely or is frequent. Your region might have a set of drought tolerant variety, and then your agronomic system must have some alternate crop for crop diversification. And in case you have some sporadic rain, you might be have some water harvesting ponds or some system so that you can save the additional water, extra water that can be used in case when the crop is in demand. Next. Then ultimately, role of advisories in adaptation. Yes, dynamic management decision. You have to change accordingly the weather scenario or likely weather or extremes or abnormalities. Then you mostly we have to go for weather responsive agriculture. In case we are likely to have more rains or deficit rains, then accordingly we have to plan so that we can have some sustainable production system on our fields. Next. Then next is very important in the hills or where the fire risk are more when in forest in that is also influenced by weather conditions because lot of dry leaves are there, the soil moisture is low sometime when there is no rain, and due to some uh, situation they may have some fire, and it will be very tough for the agency to control this in some Himalayas regions or maybe some other part of South Asia where this practice is very, and it's very dangerous. It take thousands of kilometers under fire, and what we have to save have this with some models or monitoring the weather conditions and the dryness in the region due to the fall or the dry forest conditions. Next, on the basis of different weather parameter, the researchers have made region-wise fire danger index in case what type of trees in your forest are there, what type of weather likely, what will be the temperature, range of humidity, type of wind, and fuel moisture in the forest. So they have developed this index on the basis of these index. They forecast the risk of fire in the uh, forest, so that the control wire may be devised or may be placed on the site. Next. Yes, in continuation of the forest fire forecasting, the major input or driver of this fire risk are high temperature, low humidity. These are the synonyms of then of each other. When high temperature is there, the positive correlative, the humidity will be low, if winds are strong and vegetation are dry, it's one of the first indices out of all indices you are likely to have fire in your forest. Next. Then application of risk information, how and where it is being applied. The agriculture residue burning management is also in the similar category because in past few years, a lot of residue burning there in the northwest India, and sometimes this will create havoc on the field, even on the side crops, but also it creates a lot of problem for air quality also. And then next, forest fire monitoring is also important. Then rangeland protection is also very important for the livestock in those sub-hill areas. Next, under this framework of risk management, we have to have monitoring, early warning, preparedness, and response and recovery. These are in sequence. First, you have to monitor, then you have to warn, then you have to prepare whether you are ready, and if event is there, then your response and how much you recovered. This is the ultimate risk management framework from any risk. Next. Yes, the global risk ranked by severity last year World Economic Forum in Davos, where once I happened to be there 2 years back. On the basis of these category or the uh, timeline, the short-term risks are there when weather events are in for 2 years are under fourth category, but for next 10 years the weather extreme events are in number one category. So it's also gaining very risk. the weather events over the time due to global warming and climate change. Next, the future direction. What should be the future direction for saving or attempting to reduce the risk? We must have early warning system. Our forecast should be accurate and well before time so that uh, the people will believe this. Then AI based climate risk system. Yes, nowadays AI machine learning, they use very huge data, realistic or automatic data. On the basis of those analysis, they give risk system. Yes, this is the region and this will be the likely risk during this time. And then we have to have integrated decision sport using the earlier system. And then on combination of all these three, we must have some climate resilient agriculture that can be on the farmer field. Next. Yes, while summarizing this lecture, weather risk and vulnerability, we have covered this. Then we have climatic information, which is very much important for risk reduction. Then we have contingency planning in case we have some weather extremes or abnormalities. And then we also taken care about fire risk in this is under what circumstances for forest fire or stubble burnings are there. Next. Yes, now we are free to discuss question and interaction your own practical experience so that we can discuss, we can gain from each other, which is the ultimate objective of this training.